Hello and welcome back to the Open Resorcery. It's Devi, and I am joined, of course, by Twisted.
Yo,
And today we are going to be talking about magic as a lifestyle. So I know for myself, when I think about magic as a lifestyle, it is more so living the truth that you discover within your own practices versus putting it in a box and separating it from your quote real life. But I want to get your take on how you see magic as a lifestyle and living magically.
well, in all honesty, I'm just gonna go ahead and put it simply as it's just life, plain and simple. At least how I go ahead and put it. Like, there's nothing special. There's nothing particular about like, oh yes, I have to do something like above and beyond and all of that sort of thing. In terms of when you actually get to that point of going ahead and living it and it being like second nature to you. And granted, actually, it's more so your first nature when you get it. Go ahead and think about it. When it comes to the spiritual aspect of things, just people don't think so because that's not what they're educated on when they're raised. In many cases, in the Western society and world, or just in general, a lot of people have fallen out of touch with that. So for me, like I've had plenty of experiences occur to me throughout the course of my life. And in those happening, building a foundation for later on as I became more so of a, teenager, a young adult, an adult, and all of that sort of thing. Pretty much just like I've never really gone ahead and had a lack of, divinity or a lack of the spiritual making an impact on my life in some way, shape, or form. So having that sort of passive approach and then going ahead and being like, all right, as time goes on, going ahead and acting more so, having more active, things attached to it and all that sort of thing.
Mm-hmm.
So that's just my particular case. Not everybody necessarily has those sorts of experiences when you're younger. So it's about, you may need to take a bit more of an active approach, kind of like, kick the rust off and all that sort of thing. But lo and behold, like you can even go ahead and try a bit too hard and all that sort of thing, or try to force it in an ingenuine manner. And, like, don't try to do that. Be true to yourself. And honestly, it is something that everybody potentially can do, but not everybody is necessarily meant to do it in this particular, lifetime, what have you, this particular run on things on the planet for those who happen to be aware of and or believe in, you know, reincarnation, different lifetimes, and coming back onto this earthly plane or other realms of existence and continuing to evolve in this sort of manner. But I've been going on for a minute. I'll leave it at that. What say you?
I say you're correct. Um, but in a sense, yes, with the not everyone is meant to be living a magical or spiritual life. Um, of course, there are those that are they're more physical in this existence, whether you want to say this is your only existence or this is, one of many. That is up to what you believe in your soul, in the core of who you are. But magic as a lifestyle, spirituality as a lifestyle, I have seen so many, and I don't want this to come off as judgy or anything like that, but I've seen so many, and I've been guilty of it myself because it's hard to really marry the idea of a more modern life with spirituality, in my opinion. Um, because it feels like everything is trying to take your time, everything is trying to like zap away that energy, and it's really hard to like maintain it for yourself. But I think really falling back on your practices and everything like that, it helps with forming boundaries and preventing that kind of burnout. And as a society as a whole, I do firmly believe that we need more spirituality as a lifestyle, more magic as a lifestyle, um, as just a mode of being, because otherwise, all that is and will be and continue to grow is going to be that barren wasteland of corporate hellscapes. No, thank you. I'm good.
Oh yes, yes. Go ahead and talking about you know, more so of the overarching nihilism and all of that that is trying or has been trying to permeate, you know, the mainstream consciousness and trying to push people in that direction. And the thing about it is that like some people who are not knowing themselves have clung on to it, but a lot of people have been resistant to it. It's like, yeah, no, not really. Like there's that unconscious sort of thing of like, yeah, there's more to life than just this. They don't necessarily know what the heck it is. They don't know exactly what to label it, but they feel it within themselves and all of that, even in the tiny sort of sliver and all of that. But aside from that, I did want to go ahead and talk about what you're saying of, or at least uh, you, like, you know, bouncing off of the point of not everybody's necessarily meant to go ahead and be living a spiritual lifestyle. It's something that, you know, this sort of concept has been brewing for quite some time for me and for you as well, based on previous conversations we've had. And one thing I want to bring up in particular is a question that I raised with you and other people that we know uh, several years ago.
Oh, goodness.
It could have been prior to when we were formulating, you know, this channel, the open sorcery, you know, all these sorts of interrelated things, or it could have been after we actually started putting out material. So somewhere along the lines of between 2 and 3 years ago. But
Mm.
I went ahead and asked the question of, you know, not just for you, but just in general, like, are you going to be doing magic? Are you going to be into spiritual things? Are you going to be living that sort of life 5 years from now? And, you know, like that being like a question when thinking about magic as a trend where there's a lot of people hopping on the bandwagon, but, you know, like it's a trend and a fad. And, you know, like there are, like, you know, a lot of people who are stepping into like, you know, these manners of practices or studying things that are not considered, you know, organized religion, more so looking to esoteric subjects and paranormal subjects, the occult, all of these sorts of things. But are they just in it for a fun time or a short time, or are they in it for a long time? You know. So
Yeah.
once again, you know, posing the question of, you know, if you're into magical things and spiritual things, like, will you be in it 5 years from now? You know,
I
and
think that is a wonderful question. I do remember you asking that one. Okay, I was
yep.
worried for a second that it might have been a question that like completely it's gone. Like I don't
Oh,
remember
that was a
nothing.
while back.
That
I
was a
haven't really
long
researched it
time
lately.
ago.
Yeah,
But
yeah, that
I
was a
do
while back.
recall you asking that question. And I think that is a really good basis. And I think really that's going to get down to the fundamental roots of what people believe. Because if you are just sitting here like as a, and I'm not dogging on self-help books or anything of that nature, because they do have their place. They absolutely have their place. But if you're just sitting here like, well, this person recommended this to me and they said that this is the path to success, and the path to success is that I need to manifest stuff, but in order to get into manifestation, I have to go through spirituality, and in order to do spirituality, I have to do this, that, and the other. Like, that's not really what we're here for.
Yeah,
Like,
that is under the terms of sorcery. If we're keeping with the magical lens of terminology,
mhm.
that is low magical aims and all that sort of thing. as opposed to high magical aims. That is pretty much just going ahead and wearing the aesthetic of spirituality, but your aims are very much more so having to do with, the earthly realm, the mundane. For those who are Harry Potter fans, the Muggle realm and all of that. You know what I mean? And just pretty much like, yeah, you know what? I'm trying to get something out of this, something material, something quick, short, and easy, as opposed to like, all right, I want to become a better person overall for the course of my life. And that is the first and primary sort of thing, to which I can help myself, I can help others I know and care for, to go ahead and make a bigger impact on the world or a better impact on the world, even if it isn't necessarily the biggest, and make your life more so fulfilling, So
Mhm.
that in of itself is more so of like what someone should be trying to attain or strive for, at least in my opinion, in terms of attempting to live a magical lifestyle, as opposed to like, I'm here for a fun time, I'm here for a short time, not a long time. And in all honesty, if you're here for a fun time and a short time, a lot of times if you get into some shit that actually works, it'll go ahead and bite you in the ass
Mhm.
if you're not careful. And in many cases, if you're just trying to get some shit, you're not necessarily going to go ahead and be careful about it because you want the quick, easy return.
Agreed. And that's where like the danger. And now I've stated many times, I don't like the air of secrecy around spirituality. I don't like the, oh, you can't know our secrets and we're going to hide everything from you and you have to
Gatekeeping.
go through all of these different steps in order for us to give you the information. Like, I hate that shit. I hate that
Oh,
shit
yes.
so much because this is the natural mode of being of,
Gatekeeping of different orders and
oh,
people going ahead
I
and,
hate that shit.
yeah.
I hate that shit so much. But spirituality and being interconnected with things that are divine is almost a birthright, I would say, in that we're here, we exist at the behest of blank. You know what I mean?
Yes. Blank.
And blank. And I'm not gonna put a name on it because
It's ineffable.
it
Doesn't have
is.
an actual name.
It doesn't. And it doesn't need it. Like I've said many times, even to you, like where names are involved, I'm just like, the names change over time. Who cares about names?
Yes.
All the same shit. It's gonna have a different name. Um, but it's really a birthright, and so I don't like all the gatekeeping and everything, but I do see some of the wisdom behind it because there are people that just want a quick buck. It's like, I'm going to get into magic. I'm going to study this so that I can get laid.
Oh, yes. Exactly.
And
Whether it's actually getting laid
yeesh.
in terms of a physical flesh and blood person, male or female, what have you, or I want to go ahead and summon the succubus or incubus so I can go ahead and feel some stuff wiggling on my dick that's not there physically. Or go ahead and have myself wet dreams or, whatever the hell it may be for what people are looking for.
Yeah, and the thing is, it's funny in a sense because just the thought of it is so goofy. But there is a lot of people out there that is the only aim that they have in spirituality. It is pure hedonism. It is purely what can I get out of it. It is transactional, not in a like I give you, you give me, and we build each other better kind of way. It's more like paying a hooker on the corner. Um, and that's not for anybody's betterment. I don't care who says what. I do not see how that is for anybody's betterment. But living spiritually, living magically is not that. It is more so actually going and being more of an esotericist, being more of a spiritualist, and trying to understand the nature of the world and trying to really understand your place in it versus what can I get out of it.
Oh yes. And you know, like, granted, those sorts of things, like, those should not be the primary goal. You know what I mean? Like, if, say, for the love example, right, or the sexual example, right?
Mm-hmm.
Like, is that to say that you can't apply these sorts of spiritual practices or magical things in those sectors of life for, say, other things that a lot of people come into the space as their driving motivating factors, such as money, such as, happiness in the sense of, fleeting happiness, right? As opposed to actual fulfillment, you know? And all these sorts of things trying to get, like, short term dopamine hits, or, in the case of money, like, I want to be rich. I want to go ahead and get, 7, 8, 9 figures worth of wealth and all that sort of thing, right? Like,
Mm-hmm.
that should not be your ulterior motive. But lo and behold, a lot of times that's the case. But in terms of having a magical lifestyle, right? Does it necessarily mean you got to go ahead and be a hermit or an ascetic or a monk or anything of that sort? No, not
Mm-hmm.
necessarily. If you are called to do it genuinely, truly as to who you are, and that's what you need, then by all means go ahead and do so. Be a hermit. Go ahead and live out in the woods, or go ahead and live in, a basement somewhere, or, a cabin or at a temple or whatever the case may be, right? And just go ahead and do your practices because you may more so need it, based on, like, trying to counterbalance more so being of the world, you know?
Mm-hmm.
It's a thing, I think, in phrase in that sort of aspect of it, you know, being in the world, not of it. Taking that, I believe, from uh, the Bible and the New Testament. I don't know exactly which gospel and or chapter or verse, but I believe it is one of the things that Jesus Christ, Yeshua ben Yosef themselves are attributed as the saying. But a lot of times, instead of being in the world and not of it, a lot of people are of the world, and that is where they fall short. That is where nature of sin actually comes from. You know what I mean?
Mm-hmm. Well, sin in the Christian terms, because sin, I was just
Abrahamic terms, not just
Abrahamic terms,
Christianity.
but you know what I
Yeah,
mean. Um, but in
or
terms
even
of
even worldwide
the
in terms of, like,
etymology, in terms of the etymology,
yeah.
give me just a second. I hadn't thought that we were going to talk about that one. Um,
Oh yeah. Well, let's trying to go ahead and bring that up as a big part, and just more so along the lines of, like, like, pretty much that right there is, you know, once again, being in the world and not of it, and going ahead and, your spiritual calling, you knowing yourself, being in tune with your higher self and what you're here on this earth to do, and being tapped in, all that sort of thing, as opposed to, I'm going to be immersed in these physical, material, fleeting things, and
mhm.
that being the sin, that being missing the mark, that going ahead and, well, ultimately it leads people to suffering and such. But yes, by all means, go ahead and look up the etymology for that, and we can have that little
Yeah,
small detour.
yeah. No, small detour. Okay, so uh, English language and usage, etymology of the word sin. In the Oxford English Dictionary of 1989, Volume 7, under the verb sin, it lists the earliest recorded use of the word from circa 1825 AD. The word sin was written then as singian. If the Latin suffix ian means of or belonging to, how does the verb sin derive from sing or sing, one spelled with a Y, one spelled with an I, which could be interpreted as a substantive or separate entity. Really, it's uh it's not talking about doing a bad thing. I had just looked this up and I'm so
Oh
mad that I
yes.
can't remember this off the top of
Oh,
my
it's
head.
it's all good.
But
It's all good. You know what?
sin,
Let's
it
just go
does
ahead and.
not actually refer
Oh yeah.
to you did bad.
Oh yeah, yeah. But in terms of that, let's go ahead and put a little a note or something of revisiting this at some other point and giving a little more so time. But
Sounds good.
continuing on, yeah, continuing on. But yeah, so like living a magical lifestyle and all that sort of thing. So we've kind of gone ahead and thus far talked quite a bit about like. So these are questions to ask yourself and all of that of like are you living a spiritual lifestyle? Are you in it for a long time, not just fun time or a short time, and all that sort of thing? And also, I will go ahead and say, don't something I said before. Don't try to force it. You know, don't try to go ahead and force it because I'll just put a personal anecdote for myself that many times before I went ahead and started doing angelic, you know, invocations or just general, what I call prayer invocations or actively using tools for divination or whatever the case may be, right? And those sorts of practices and having a more so active approach, I had just been interested in knowledge seeking and going ahead and learning about different subjects of a spiritual, mystical, paranormal, political, conspiratorial, occult nature, all these sorts of things, and acquiring that information, not necessarily intending to use it for any particular purpose, not necessarily trying to be like, I'm going to learn how to go ahead and cast a spell so I can make a wand and have fireballs come out of it like in Harry Potter or anything like that. But all in all, it was what drove me. It was something about, you know, the way that I came across a certain amount of certain things informationally that just I was drawn to continue to go down the rabbit hole of information. And then lo and behold, as time went on, I got the inclinations, I got signs that I went ahead and interpreted as like, oh, I'm being reached out to. Okay, these particular beings, these particular entities are wanting to work with me, what have you, and all of that sort of thing. But prior to that, like when I was talking with people and conversing with them, they're like, "Oh shit, you know a couple things, you know a few things, and all that." Uh, like how the hell do you know all these sorts of things when you don't do magic? And it's like I don't know, just always been interested in this. I look these things up. It's what I put my time. It's what I put my time and effort into. And I I always considered myself as having an esoteric mind, what
Mm-hmm.
have you. And the thing about it is like, they say, oh, you should get into it. Like, one sort of terminology that gets thrown around a lot is that someone looking into the subjects, what have you, but not doing anything with it is an armchair cultist and all sort of thing. If you're looking into grimoires and you're looking into different sort of things and what have you, and the thing about it is like for me, I was just going with the personal flow, and when the personal flow led me to go ahead and doing some things, all right, I went ahead and did it when it more so felt right. And that internal calling came about, that internal draw, marching to the beat of my own drum, you can say, as opposed to doing it on someone else's terms or based on what other people thought. And that is what I advise for everyone else to do is in terms of living a magical lifestyle and all that sort of thing and what you choose to do for you in whatever shape and form, whatever pathway or whatever brand or flavor or label or whatever spiritually, go ahead and do what is right for you
Mm-hmm.
and follow that. Follow your heart, you can say, and follow your intuition, and it shan't lead you astray and all that. What about you?
No, I kind of want to bounce off of that a little bit. Is more if you are so into something, Doesn't even have to be religion, right? Can be an art, can be a belief, can be anything, right? If you are so into it that that is what your free time is used for, that is what relaxes you, that is almost a what I call a calling, act upon it. Act upon it. I'm so like I'm very much action oriented, which I know you always scold me with the whole patience thing. But with any of these inclinations and any of these callings, if it's calling to you strong enough, yeah, learning is great. Experience is better. If it feels wrong, don't do it. If it feels like you should be doing something but you are afraid of judgment, do it anyway. Do it anyway.
Oh yes, and I'm definitely going to support that. Uh, even though you're bouncing off what I said before, that I second what you said, and you know, just as the one song goes, listen to your heart when he's calling for you. Listen to your heart. There's nothing else you can do. I don't know where you're going, and I don't know why. Listen to your heart before he tells you goodbye, and you can substitute he for whatever that particular calling is, and or that particular activity is, and pretty much saying before you happen to go ahead and not have as much of an opportunity to go ahead and grasp it, to go ahead and be able to full like more so fully attain and reap the benefits of it with this time you have on this planet.
Mm-hmm.
You know, and with that being said, I think we can go ahead and transition a little bit more so into my reading of another person's thoughts on living a magical lifestyle. Now, we were already going ahead and planning on having this conversation for quite a while now, and the subject. But funny enough, a person that's I know I have referenced several times on the channel, in this series of videos and such, several times. Once again, Brother Yosef, and he happened to have a live Q&A video. On February 23rd, 2024. And in watching that and seeing all different types of questions pouring in, he went ahead and touched upon the subject of living a magical lifestyle in a couple of his responses to some of those questions. So I went ahead and in listening to it again just before we went ahead and started the conversation here, I went ahead and listened to what he had to say, and then kind of like paraphrased and organized it into key points. And I have about five of them here of his particular take. And after I read each one of them, I want to go ahead and get your input, Debbie, in regards to that. So once again,
Okay.
what I'm going to be reading now is Brother Yosef's perspective on living a magical lifestyle from his February 23rd, 2024 Q&A session on his own channel, which I can link the video to that below so you can hear verbatim what the man said himself as opposed
Mm-hmm.
to my own edited paraphrasing. So, number one, magic isn't about getting what you want out of life. It's a lifestyle. People are looking to get power, not to evolve, which in many cases is why they want spells and rituals. So, in your response being,
Yes, absolutely. And we had kind of touched on that before, where people are wanting a quick fix. They're wanting, a fast check, uh, quick sex. Like they're not looking for any evolution within themselves. They are more looking for satisfy a quick want, but not actually doing the work behind it, which is going to bite you in the ass so hard.
Oh,
So
yes.
hard.
Yes. So, number 2, to properly live a spiritual lifestyle, find spiritual principles to live by. Some examples of this are that if you identify as a shaman, then adhere to shamanic principles. Same applies if you label yourself a Sufi mystic, and so on.
Uh okay. That one I'm going to go more into gray area because all written works are written by people. People are fallible. People can be corrupted. Words can be corrupted. I am going to say figure out what you need. Maybe use that as a template, but go through the beliefs and the practices and then mold them to yourself, because there's going to be practices that you sit there and you're just like, no, no, this does not align with me. This is not correct. I do not feel that this is right. Um, like whenever, goodness, if I can speak, whenever I was first going into spirituality and I was studying Wicca, um, because I did that when I was a teenager. My mom introduced me to it. Ta-da. Um, but with some of the practices, I was just like, no, this doesn't feel right. I don't like this. This is not correct to me. Um, and if you feel like something is not correct to you, it does not align with you, it is not for you. Don't do it.
Oh, yes. So, Brother Yosef's third point, you must become a vessel and surrender to your higher self, not only acting as if you are, and in not only acting as if you are, and in a genuine fashion, but doing it from your heart.
Uh, yes and no. See, you know damn well I got an issue with the whole concept of surrender overall. Like surrender is not a bad thing in spirituality. Like there is of course the whole concept of power, right? And surrender can feel like giving your power away in a sense. But surrendering to a higher power, not necessarily. I mean, there are spiritualists who are more along the lines of atheist. And I know that sounds kind of wonky, but from what I have seen, it works. And it's not necessarily submitting to something or being like, I am less than, you are greater than, I will follow. Like, none of that. No. It's more of a recognition of one's place within the world, in a sense. But I've got an issue as a whole with the concept of submitting and all of that. So maybe that might just be a me thing.
Well, I think that what I don't know if you necessarily phrased it right in the sense of like, I'm not going to go ahead and try to speak for you,
Mm-hmm.
but in terms of like, you may be going ahead and seeing what Brother Yosef is saying is more so along the lines of right hand path, you know what I mean? And
Mm-hmm.
that sort of thing, as opposed to, say, a left hand path approach or a middle of the way, middle path approach, right?
Mm-hmm.
Is that more so accurate, you could say?
Yeah, because I pretty much stay middle path. I'm not like, I don't serve a god in that sense. I foster relationships with them, but I'm not sitting there going
Or
like, "Oh,
serve
powerful."
divinity, you
Yeah.
know? Yeah.
Yeah, and it just, I don't know, that rubs me the
Serving,
wrong way.
yeah,
Maybe it's just the verbiage. It might just be the verbiage.
yes, I think it's probably more so the verbiage and your particular sort of, you know, your negation of the term surrender, the concept of surrender, becoming a vessel, and all that sort of thing, right? I think it's just your particular distaste for it and
Mhm.
all of that. Yeah.
Yeah.
And
Now,
just to go ahead and clarify, I just want to go ahead and clarify for those who are listening of, all right, so right hand path, what the hell are they talking about and all that? Right hand path generally is you are focusing on uh, serving divinity, being more so of a servant, and not necessarily going ahead and doing for self, what have you, and the even allowing the dissolving of self. Whereas, say, left hand path is more so along the lines of fuck the whole totality of things. I'm gonna strictly go ahead and do for self and go ahead and try to go ahead and become a god and all that of my own particular pocket universe, as opposed to say serving under a even higher power and all of that. Or middle of the way, once again, trying to balance selflessness with selfishness in a sort of healthy, happy medium and all of that.
a happy medium of give and take. You are not going to sacrifice to the point that you cannot exist, and you are not going to take to the point of causing others harm. It's do no harm but
Yeah.
take no shit.
Yeah. So in that sort of regard, I think that's more so like, what you're trying to go and phrase that you're not necessarily if what he's stating is coming from a right hand path perspective, or at least that's how you interpret it,
Mm-hmm.
then yes, not particularly you, you're more so middle path along the way. So
Mm-hmm.
that's why you disagree with that particular uh point of Brother Yosef's that was stated. But yes, I will go ahead and say for myself in that sort of manner, I myself am more so adhering to middle of the way, but I don't necessarily see an issue with the right hand path and all of that. If that is what someone wishes to choose to do for themselves, by all means go ahead and do so. And but in terms of becoming a vessel and surrendering to a higher self, to your higher self, not only acting as if you are and in a genuine fashion, but doing it from your heart. I don't necessarily ascribe that particularly to the right hand path, and I think that in of itself is something that I personally agree with in putting my own anecdote for that particular point of things.
Mm-hmm.
You know, that is something I think can go ahead and apply to any of the three paths and all of that, which there's more than three paths, but just that simple concept of understanding and all of that for such things. But I digress, and let me move on with stating Brother Yosef's perspectives and points and going ahead and getting your response to them.
Mm-hmm.
So, the fourth one is when you've seen spiritual things for so long and been in the community for so long, you know what to look for. Just because someone begins to meditate and starts wearing a couple crystals doesn't mean you're spiritual. There's nothing wrong with wearing crystals, yet a hallmark sign of people who are new is that they accumulate a bunch of gemstones, likely without even knowing what their purposes and functions are.
Well, yes, there are people that come in and they just want to cosplay for a little bit. And I'm going to put it that way. They want to cosplay for a little bit. They want to pretend for a little bit. They want to feel pretty with the bracelets and the necklaces and have the pretty rocks and things like that, but it's like, okay, why? And eventually they get bored cuz fads change. And I hate to say it that way because I would like everyone to be able to have a spiritual experience and to actually open themselves up and experience being part of the world. But under that same token, it's not for everybody, and sometimes people are just attracted to the aesthetic of it. Sometimes they're kind of pressured maybe by their friend group, like maybe somebody that they are interested in is going along that path, but it's it definitely has become more and more of a trend lately. Um but I think there is always going to be kind of a underbelly of those who just like to come in and play pretend.
As the question I went ahead and brought up earlier is, anyone listening, will you be here 5 years from now in regards to doing spiritual things, magical things, occult, and all sort of thing? And hell, that's a question I ask myself every so often: is will I be here 5 years from now? And keeping that in mind. And when I ask myself the question, I'm like, yeah, I will be. In terms of living a magical lifestyle or having spirituality, that's how I'm going to be in this life, in this lifetime that I have. Not necessarily saying that I'm going to go ahead and be like, oh, I'm going to go ahead and do card reading, or I'm going to go ahead and call upon different entities and forces, or I'm going to do dream interpretation, or I'm going to look up these subjects and all that sort of thing. Like, it's just who I am. It's been who I have been since I took my first breath on this planet,
Mm-hmm.
and long before that, I'm sure. So that's how I'm going to be till the day I die, and then you know, or at least the persona, the uh, individual known as Twisted, the ego who identifies as Twisted, happens to die. And then guess what? I'm going to continue on being a spiritual being and all that sort of thing. So I know for myself, that's where I'm at. And that's a good thought to keep in mind for anyone out there who's listening.
Fully
Go ahead and
agree.
ask yourself and being honest with yourself. And then the last point that Brother Yosef went ahead and stated in all of that. Also, if someone goes from considering themselves spiritual to becoming a Christian or joining the other organized religion, they were never truly living spiritually in the first place.
You see, even as that is stated out loud, I have low tone ringing in my ear of full disappointment from the spirits that surround us of hell no. Hell no. Okay. Organized religion is not necessarily antithetical to spirituality. And I know, that coming from a witch is probably heretical in all circles.
Funny enough that in a recent posting on the Open Sorcery TikTok, you went ahead and stated that corporations are a cult, and as well as your perspective that organized religions are in fact a cult and all that sort of thing. So funny enough that you're saying something like this after saying something like that,
The thing is,
in terms of the
it's
public
not
space.
it's not different. It's not different. All faiths, all religions are cults. Cults, and I'm saying this again just to kind of hammer the point home.
Yes,
All cults is a group of people that hold the same belief.
yes.
So every single religion is a cult. Every single faith is a cult.
Well, I will go ahead and say this, right? In terms of if someone goes from being spiritual, becoming Christian, what have you, I agree that it is not necessarily antithetical, what have you, in the sense that, there are many different religions or labels, what have you, right? Like, you could go ahead and be Catholic or, you know, Orthodox Christian, or go ahead and be uh, a Muslim, or, go ahead and be a Hindu or be a Buddhist, and you be in tune spiritually, in tune with the realm beyond. have you. And I would say that, if you find your way there, if that's your path, if that's your way through, go ahead and do so. But don't do it just because that it's a particular expectation from family members or your community around you. Do because that's truly what you're called to do, the path that you're supposed to walk. What works best for you to go ahead and keep, living that magical, that spiritual lifestyle and all that sort of thing. Having those principles ingrained within you and or sticking to them, and all of that to whatever extent you need to,
Mm-hmm.
if that is the template that you particularly are needing.
No,
So
and
yes.
I mean with a lot of these belief systems, right? Hindu or Buddhism, the Abrahamic religions, they preach a lot of the same freaking things. And we were talking about this the other day, where there is many paths that go to the same place. If that path is what you need to take to further your spiritual experience, then take it. I would hope that you wouldn't go to the extremist sides on all fronts, because all religions, unfortunately, are going to have an extremist element, because there are a lot of people that take things entirely too literally. We have to remember these are spiritual and religious texts. They are not literal. They are not literal. But taking those paths is not going to negate the spiritual experience. It's not. And I find, yes, in a lot of the spiritual circles, there is a huge, huge amount of anti Christian, anti organized religion, anti this, that, and the other. It's not positive to do that. If that is what assists people in experiencing spirituality, and they can feel the presence of God or Yahweh or Allah, or feeling the presence of the Buddha, or what have you, who are you to tell them that they are practicing incorrectly? Who are you to tell them that their spiritual experience is wrong, when you're literally damning them for doing the same thing that some of the more extreme people in those religions are doing to you? Like, remember, whenever you're pointing a finger, 3 fingers are pointing back at yourself. Like, careful who you point at.
Oh yes, yes, yes. Do not, yes, as the golden rule says, do unto others as you have done to yourself. That includes going ahead and having heavy judgment.
Mm-hmm.
To put it very simply and succinctly.
Mm-hmm.
But yes, so those are the thoughts of Brother Yosef on living a magical lifestyle, or at least my paraphrasing of said thoughts. And once again, I will have the video down there for you to go ahead and listen to the whole session or find where he speaks on it himself. And you go ahead and listen to the man's own words for yourself if you, in fact, are interested. But yes, so in terms of living a magical lifestyle or a spiritual lifestyle, is there anything else you can think of? Because I got my thoughts out pretty much.
No, I've got majority of my thoughts out, but it's more along the lines of, you have to find out what is correct for you, and that is going to take a lot of introspection. It is going to take a lot of trust in your own intuition, in yourself, in your entirety. And that's incredibly difficult to do, because we are taught from a very young age to not exactly trust what we see and what we feel. The boogeyman in the corner wasn't real. The monster under the bed wasn't real. We didn't see that shadow move. There's no such thing as ghosts, right? All of that is said incredibly tongue in cheek. But we are taught not to trust ourselves. We are taught not to trust the senses that we have and the feelings that we have. And so going into a spiritual practice and living spiritually is recognizing that you have those experiences. They are very much real, and learning to trust them. Without
Yes.
trust of the self, there is no spirituality. There is no spiritual experience because there is only doubt. So
Oh
that
yes.
I think that I will leave everything off with.
Oh yes. And you know, in terms of living a spiritual lifestyle and all that sort of thing, honestly, just know thyself and go ahead and, yeah, saying that general principle for the millionth time and all of that, because truth be told, that's the core basis of it. Learn who you are, know thyself, and then go ahead and find what works for you. Live genuinely. And when you live genuinely, then it'll be more so easy, proper, and appropriate for you to live a magical lifestyle, regardless of whatever sort of lens you have on for it, whatever sort of flavor that you wish to have, whatever sort of practices you wish to go ahead and utilize in your tool belt or what have you. And the one thing I'm going to reiterate that was brought up several times already, but I kind of want to put it as the bookend for this is think to yourself if you are going ahead and into these subjects of the occult, esotericism, spirituality, the paranormal, the mystical, will you be here 5 years from now? Or is it just for you a fad, a trend, a fart in the wind, and all of that?
Poetry.
So, yes, yes, very, very much so. But yes, so I'm good on that.
All right. Well, this has been Devi and Twisted
Yes.
on the Open Resorcery, and we will catch you guys next time. Have a good one.
Stay frosty, Neguses. Peace.